let's see. All right. Let's just get going. So, as I mentioned last time, we're going to be doing a lot of things in iterations. So, like, I want to talk about word formation today, but there are certain things that I have to introduce very briefly that are, you know, tangential to it, but necessary to understand it. And in fact, next week we're going to cover word category, lexical categories, in other words, parts of speech. But I can't really talk about words in general without talking about them. So we'll talk a tiny bit about parts of speech this week, and then we're going to come back at it next week better prepared to understand the way things are actually working. So my goals for today: what's a word? How are they structured? What we call the morphology. Where do new words come from? Hey, Emmy, how's it going? Oh, wait, you were here before. Sorry. Changes in words over time. That I'm not... I had planned to say much more about this tonight, but I probably won't have time for it. We'll see. And also, I want to wrap up by talking a little bit about something practical, which is dictionaries, how we use them, what's involved. Right. And by the way, you're hearing Kai bark because I got Thai food being delivered, so he's excited. But my daughter will get the food, so I'm just gonna keep plunging. All right, hey Chris, how's it going? And Mrs. Smarty Pants, good to see you here too. So, first question for you all. How many words do you think you know? A few. You feel like a lot? I mean, would you say... maybe that's a very nice, precise number, Bins. 845, 5,000. All of you almost certainly know a lot more than that, but in many ways, it's a dumb question to ask, at least one. Yeah. Like, how exactly do we answer this? Like, we can talk about relative numbers, but we have to define a lot of terms in order to even have any hope of answering that question. And even after we define our terms, it's still really difficult to answer. I mean, we can say things like, we can answer questions like, how many entries are there in a particular dictionary, right? Yeah, Mega used 3 in the answer, so at least one is technically accurate, but at least 3. And you clearly knew more than that because you were able to respond to my question, which had more words in it than that. So, I mean, like, you'll go online and you'll see different, like, vocab survey things. Some are better done than others, but don't take any of those numbers particularly seriously. Like, if you hear somebody say, oh, Shakespeare had the vocabulary of like 30,000 words, right? What they're saying, what they mean by that really is they have counted the number of words in Shakespeare, and that's roughly how many he uses in his plays. But it's it's not just virtually certain, it is certain that Shakespeare knew a lot more words than just the ones that he wrote down, right? We only have a very limited corpus of his writings, and that's not at all what he says, right? The major unabridged dictionaries have hundreds of thousands of entries, of which most of them are very learned technical words, but even that doesn't actually cover we all check to see if the swear words are there, right? And yeah, they are. So So in order to answer it, the first thing we have to ask is, what's a word, right? And that's a problem. What does it count to know a word, right? So for example, it's going to be hard for me to come up with an example that would work for all of you, but you have probably had the experience of running across a word and you know you've run across that word before, but you're not exactly sure what it means, right? So, I mean, an example for me, this is an older example, but like there was a time when I kept running across the word louche in various writing. I'll give you a free word of the day for you there. And I kept looking it up and I kept forgetting what it meant, right? So if I were to run across that word now, right, I could tell you what it means. It's basically, disreputable, in a kind of appealing way, like a grotesque. Well, that's a separate issue, right? That's like, you can learn a word out of a book without knowing how it's pronounced, right? There's plenty of examples of that. I mean, think about the number of people who first read Harry Potter who didn't know how to pronounce that character's name, right? In fact, if I recall, Rowling even made fun of it in a fourth book about having somebody pronounce it Hermione instead of Hermione. You still say it your own way. My mother actually told me that when she was a little girl, we were talking about the pronunciation of Hermione, and she mentioned that when she was a little girl, she actually was saying that name as Penelope. So I should have gotten this. I saw a very funny tweet on Twitter this morning where the guy was talking about how fun it is to pronounce all the words ending in English ending in CLES the way that you pronounce Heracles, right? So you get testicles, right? Motorcycles, right? Bicycles, yeah, something. Muscle please, yeah. But yeah. But anyway, yeah, those obviously, so there's plenty of words that we encounter in writing, if we're literate, that we encounter in writing all the time, that might know what they mean, but we have no idea how they're conventionally pronounced, right? And so, particularly with, actually, I had a student one time, this was years ago, tell me that she was reading the Peloponnesian War, about the Peloponnesian War by Thucydides. So, hey Mimi, how's it going? So you got lots of those. And Soma, good to see you here too. So, yes. I had a very hard time. In fact, I think I actually failed. Usually when a student mispronounces something, I sympathize, and so I try to be as nice about it as possible. But that one just caught me so off guard that I just burst out laughing. Looking back on it, that probably was bad, But yeah, it is not pronounced dumbass. That's a great example. I love that one. Yes, Duma, not dumbass. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those are obviously, like, especially the Greek ones, people don't have a lot of familiarity with, how it works. And so they don't do it. But anyway, we're going on a long digression here. My basic point was, and I'm happy to do that, by the way, but my basic point here was when we're talking about what you know as a word, how much do you have to know? Like, what counts as knowledge? Is it the ability to give a rough definition? Is it just that you recognize it, having seen it? Is it knowing just one meaning of the word or all meanings of the word? This is a very Goethe, yes. If you don't know German, definitely. Let's see. And how do you guys pronounce this guy's name? You go for the Dutch pronunciation, Vince. Van Gogh. Right? Van Gogh is, of course, what most Americans say. And that's a reasonable anglicization. You say it the proper Dutch way. Okay. Fair enough. But words get anglicized, right? And that's a natural process. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's one thing to sort of pronounce it approximately the way it is in the donor language. It's another to try to be super pedantic about it and to say things that are just like phonetically not part of native English, right? And Van Gogh is one of them, at least unless you're Scottish. So yeah, and the other question of how many words you know is how do we even go about testing it, right? Like, there's no practical way that I can give you an exhaustive test of your vocabulary knowledge. What am I going to do? Start with aardvark in the dictionary and work my way all the way through everything? Yeah, very true. So, so these vocab tests that you'll find, they try to give a reasonable sample of it, of what you're doing. Yep, earth pig, exactly. Another good Dutch borrowing, or actually, I believe that comes not directly from Dutch, but from Afrikaans, right? Which obviously is related. But